We are only a week away from our first bit of rugby league in 2022. The Indigenous versus Māori All-Stars game is in a week's time. While we do know the squads and everyone's out here giving their team lists, I'm here to put a downer on the mood and talk about something that is pretty controversial. While it'll be great to see the young prospects for both the Indigenous and Māori All-Stars teams, I can't help but feel this year has been tainted by the fact that so many of the more established NRL players won't be taking part. And while guys like Ponga and Cody Walker will be sitting out due to injuries and other factors, probably the biggest player in this game, Latrell Mitchell, is set to be sidelined because he will have to be forced to miss this game due to that lingering suspension, courtesy of the Joseph Manu hit from last year's game against the Sydney Roosters, which became quite controversial in itself. Obviously, Latrell Mitchell ended up having to miss the grand final, and if he plays, I think the Rabbitohs would be sitting here as the 2021 premiers, but that's an entirely different conversation to be had. I think the punishment is fair, but everyone has seemed to be disagreeing on whether Latrell Mitchell should be allowed to play in the All-Stars match, considering he will be allowed to play in the Charity Shield. But guys, before we get straight into this video, you need to do the classics. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and of course get involved down in that comment section below. But before we go any further and get straight into the main portion of this video, I do need to address the fact that no, I have no cultural ties to the Indigenous or the Māori heritage, and hence this video may be controversial to some people by the way I talk about this All-Stars game. I do think I have a very good understanding about how much it means to both their cultures and their heritages, but I'm basically saying this because I'm going to be looking at this from a more rugby league business sort of view rather than tying it to both the culture and heritage backgrounds. So, didn't think I needed to say that, but I did, because I don't want to be criticised in the comments. So yeah, let's get straight into this video. For better or worse, Latrell Mitchell is the most polarising player, not only in this generation of rugby league, but you could argue of the NRL era. He's been a poster boy for good and bad. Mainly his work as an Indigenous ambassador has been terrific. However, he is also labelled by mainstream media as a grub who, well, you could argue some of his dirty tactics on the field, they're not the best. They can be great, as we saw when he dominated Will Chambers in those 2018 Origin and Grand Final series. However, we can also see the bad side of it, mainly what he did to Joseph Manu. Now, was it intentional? I don't believe to think so. I believe Latrell is going to make a statement against his former team and a man who, let's not forget, only a couple of years ago dominated him in that game between Australia and New Zealand. So was this bit of revenge, trying to put a big hit, trying to make a highlight play? Maybe it was, but definitely went the wrong way, and Latrell Mitchell is still currently serving his time for the suspension. Now, argue with the carry-on points about the judiciary system, it's kind of flawed, but these are the facts. Latrell Mitchell copped a 6-week ban, which he is currently still serving, and he is due to come back in 2022 against the Sydney Roosters. However, he has also been banned from the All-Stars game, a game which I think Latrell Mitchell would regard as almost as highly regarded as playing for his state and state of origin. And after also having to miss the grand final and now missing what is the equivalent of a state of origin game, I could probably only imagine what sort of pain Latrell Mitchell is feeling right now, considering nearly everyone believes that if Latrell Mitchell plays, and they're sitting here talking about the Bunch Premiership ring, and maybe Cody Walker gets a giant Rabbitoh tattooed on his rib cage. And hopefully, it's a little bit better than Nathan Cleary's. Now, many people believe that Latrell Mitchell should be playing in the All-Stars game, and it did spark a bit of a debate, but now the debate is ramping up to the fact that now Latrell Mitchell is actually going to be eligible to play in the Charity Shield match rather than missing out, as he will have to do for the All-Stars game. And look, a lot of people are saying this doesn't make sense. If we want to market the All-Stars game as a big game, as in it's on the terms of origin, as they do play for a trophy, then yeah, he should miss it. Because it's like Origin. If a player gets suspended and they can't play Origin, guess what? They don't play Origin. So, to me, at least, the NRL, while it's not there yet, is trying to make the All-Stars game as big as Origin. Now, playing it before the season doesn't help it a lot, considering it's even played before any trial games. But it gives a chance to these players, not so much on the Indigenous side, but a lot of these Māori All-Stars players who end up having to play for the New Zealand Kiwis can't play State of Origin. So this is essentially the only rep footy they can get outside of international level. So, at least to me, this is probably, while it isn't as close yet, is seen on the level of State of Origin. And if Latrell Mitchell got his 6-week suspension in the middle of Origin, he'd miss it. Just like Victor Radley did, just like Wade Graham did a few years back. But Latrell Mitchell has been suspended. And as if he were to do for Origin, he should be out of the All-Stars game. Now, why can he play in the Charity Shield? Because while they play for a trophy, it is no different to any other trial match. The only difference the Charity Shield has been to any other trial match in recent years is because they play for a trophy. They usually do it at a suburban ground, and it's usually the only game that ever gets featured on Fox League in the pre-season. So while I am here trying to say the All-Stars game is on the equivalent of State of Origin, no, the Charity Shield is just a trial match. It's nowhere close. So, should Latrell Mitchell play in the Charity Shield? Yes, because it's a trial match. It's the same as NBA in their pre-season. Latrell Mitchell, if he had done something in the off-season and he copped a 3-game suspension, he would miss the start of the season, not the trial matches, just like what happened to Payne Haas last year. However, what I don't agree with is the fact that while he will be missing the All-Stars game, Latrell Mitchell's suspension won't be cut short. As in, what I could have just said, that makes it sound so much simpler, is the All-Stars game that he will miss will not count to his suspension. And why do I think this? It's because the NRL have an agenda. Because Latrell Mitchell's first game back is scheduled to be up against the Sydney Roosters. And look, at the end of the day, the NRL, their broadcasters, this is an entertainment business. And when Roosters versus Rabbitohs at the start of 2022 is coming around the corner, Latrell Mitchell's hit on Joseph Manu will be talked about. It'll be talked through journalists, to Trent Robinson, to the players, to the coaches before the game. They'll be interviewing them pre-game about these. They'll be talking to Latrell Mitchell all week. They'll be writing articles about how Joseph Manu never forgave Latrell Mitchell. Just like we saw when Seabolt and Bennett went one-on-one. They're going to beef this up. They're going to make it a big thing, which it is. I mean, Latrell Mitchell missed a final series. He missed the grand final. He cost the South Sydney Rabbitohs the 2021 Premiership, if you want to think of it like that. I know some Rabbitohs do think that. And while as unfortunate as that may be, I think the All-Stars game has to carry the same weight. It's the same as if, like I said, Payne Haas got suspended. But let's use a different example. Kalen Ponga got suspended for, I don't know, saying something oblivious on his little podcast, on the 257 podcast, which is elite. And he cops a 3-game suspension. He's probably missing the All-Stars game, and he's probably missing the first 3 rounds of the season, but he isn't missing the trial matches because no one cares about the trial matches. Yes, they may be on Fox League, but let's not forget, the Tigers pumped Manly in a trial match last year. Manly finished where? Top 4. Tigers, where'd they finish? Bottom 4. And while their fans did give them a standing applause at half-time, at the end of the day, no one cared. And that is why Latrell Mitchell will be playing in the Charity Shield. But if we're trying to market the All-Stars game as on the equivalent of State of Origin, Latrell Mitchell can't play in that. It's the same as if a player got suspended and he had to miss an international game, if he had to miss a city country game, and of course if he has to miss an Origin game. It's also the same as if he has to miss the NRL Grand Final. And I can only imagine, well, I couldn't, because I'm sure it's way worse, Latrell Mitchell's feeling right now. He misses the entire final series. He misses the grand final, which the Rabbitohs would have more than likely won. And now he has to miss the All-Stars game, which I would assume and pretty much can guarantee it's one of Latrell Mitchell's biggest games of the year. However, the suspension shouldn't count. I think that's a bit dog, for a lack of a better word. It's a dog move at the NRL because they want to see Roosters Rabbitohs as Latrell Mitchell's comeback game, so they can market that. it's not gone, and it's not really ethical. But I can understand why he's missing the All-Stars match, but let it count to his suspension. As the NRL Grand Final did, no, it shouldn't cost more than one game, but it should count towards his suspension, because unfortunately that's the position Latrell Mitchell put himself in when he decided to try and take Joseph Manu's head off. So, what I've been trying to say is, Latrell Mitchell missing the All-Stars game is a fair punishment, but it should count towards his suspension. But he can play in the Charity Shield, because just like anyone else who's been suspended, it's just a trial match. Sorry if that didn't make any sense. I'm trying to get better at this. Guys, if of course you haven't already, you got to smash that like button, get involved in that comment section down below, and subscribe to the home of footy content in 2022. And I'll see you guys in the next one.